Hello and welcome to a live Third Apron podcast. I'm your host, Yossi NBA salary cap analyst. Joining me, as always, my co-host Sam Quinn. We are going to discuss all the news that happened in the past 3 or so days. No veterans were traded on the first round two nights ago, and then we got a couple of moves yesterday in the morning and during the draft, and then this morning we got that big trade, LaMelo Ball to the Minnesota Timberwolves. We're going to start with that. Kawhi rumors, touch into that, and maybe some other things related to the Grizzlies. They made a trade, the Lakers. That is all coming up. Sam, how are you doing this fine evening?
Yossi, I love a surprise trade. I think we both got pretty sick of the Giannis stuff over the year that it happened. We milked it for all it was worth content-wise, but by the end, especially since it was Miami, I think Boston was a little bit fresher. That would have been a little bit more interesting to talk about. But by the time it was Miami, it was just like not super interesting anymore. This one came out of left field. We were texting each other fake trades last night. He gets traded, 12 hours after the initial reporting? Like, that raises some questions about the timing. Like, did they have to do something in the draft before they were comfortable making that trade? Just a much more fun, surprising, typical offseason wildcard trade. So I'm invigorated. I'm excited to talk about this.
Glad the Giannis rumors are over. That was, I think, the longest trade saga in at least recent history. That took over a year when you count that it was like May of last year when he was available, but the Bucks wouldn't really make him available, and we're hearing it, and that dragged forever. I'm glad this is over. And then we get LaMelo Ball. It lasted only one day. I like when things go a little smoother there. And yeah, it looks like that one was probably pretty much maybe discussed for a while, and yeah, may have been contingent on some things. I don't know what exactly that could have been. I mean, what did the Hornets do at the draft? They drafted Hannes Steinberg.
Christian Anderson is the big one at number 18, the guard.
So were they afraid that, like, I know they were linked to Memphis, that they were going to miss him, and that gave them the confidence to do it? I don't know. I think they were going to do this trade anyways.
I think so. I just think it's a good trade for both sides. You want to just dive into it?
Yeah, let's get into it. So the Wolves, let me get the whole details out. So last night seemed like a pretty quiet draft entirely. We had the Isaiah Stewart trade, but then we get the big news on TV. I was like listening to this live when Sham said after the draft concluded that the Hornets are listening to offers for LaMelo Ball and are serious about trading him. And then what really got me feeling that, it's for sure going to happen is when Mark Stein tweeted how the Wolves and the Raptors were frontrunners, because whenever he'll do those types of tweets are kind of like specific, like where a player could go and for who, those like are real, almost always precursors to the trade, like about to happen.
Mark doesn't mess around. He's the alpha insider.
Yeah. So I'm just thinking, okay, I guess it's happening. One of these teams, it's probably going to happen. And then this morning we get the news. I like literally woke up the minute, like I woke up, checked my phone, nothing really other than Horford. And then like immediately the notification happens that the Charlotte Hornets are trading LaMelo Ball with Josh Green to the Minnesota Timberwolves for Naz Reid, which really surprised me. 2031 first round pick, 3 swaps, 3 seconds. We'll dissect those a little later. They're not all of those are going to convey. This is probably one of the, a lot of people called most NBA trades crazy, but this was really one of the crazier ones in my mind, because the Hornets feels like they're taking a big step back, which is surprising after the huge step that they made forward. And also for the Wolves part, I think it's also very surprising that not only was this enough to get him, but it might not seem like a lot of stuff for LaMelo Ball, but for the Wolves, that is a lot of stuff. It's everything they had left that wasn't like one of their core players. So now they mortgage every last chip again to restructure their foundation again. So where do you want to start with this, Sam?
So it's funny. Somebody texted me a couple hours ago just talking about the LaMelo trade. And he goes, is it okay if I think the Wolves a D or something? And I was like, I think this is the rare trade where you could genuinely give either team any grade whatsoever. If you think the Hornets got an A because LaMelo is a Carnival player, that's totally fine. If you think the Hornets got an F because LaMelo is a franchise level talent, That makes sense as well. You could apply that logic to either team. It could be a championship winning trade in the end for either side. Not immediately in Charlotte's case. We'll get into that. But like this could be a franchise altering trade for either team in a good or bad direction. And we rarely see trades quite like that. It's interesting to me because what I read from this trade was two teams having the same realization about themselves and reacting to that realization in wildly different, but honestly, I think equally valid and equally reasonable ways. Both the Hornets and the Timberwolves looked at themselves and said, we are not good enough to win a championship. In Minnesota's case, that's obviously a more immediate concern because they'd made the conference finals twice, lost in the second round last year. They're on the clock with Anthony Edwards. So they really had to do something to get in the mix, whether it was now or later. I've talked about them as the hokey pokey team of the offseason. They had to go further in or further out. Turns out they went further in. The Hornets weren't really an immediate kind of championship contender team, but they were taking the long view and asking themselves, is LaMelo Ball capable of being a franchise player on a championship team? And can your foundation as a championship level team be LaMelo Ball, Con Knipple, and Brandon Miller? They came to what I think is a reasonable conclusion that the answer to that was no. They obviously weren't going to trade Knipple because he has 3 cheap years left on his deal. And like, he's not the creator that LaMelo is, but man, there were moments last year where I was like, this is the second best shooter I've ever seen. They weren't going to trade Brandon Miller, I don't think either, just him being the only big defender. Well, he's not like a great defender, but big wing with defensive upside of the 3. LaMelo obviously is a traffic cone on defense, or at least generally has been. I'm hopeful that he can improve in Minnesota. This is 2 teams essentially saying, we have to change something very, very drastic about where we are as a franchise if we are going to ever meaningfully compete for a title. And I agree with the conclusion that both of them came to, because in Charlotte, I think LaMelo would have had to have been the franchise guy, and I don't think he can be that. But in Minnesota, where you have an apex scorer in Anthony Edwards, who can score in all of the ways that LaMelo can't, by the way, like his growth as a mid-range and post-up scorer this year, that takes him, I think, into the top tier of players, the kind of guys who like are genuinely good enough to win MVP, who can make the tough shots at the end of playoff games. He is good enough now to be the best player on a championship team, but he still does have flaws. The one big one is that he's just not much of a passer. Minnesota was 28th in the NBA in potential assists last year. The only guy on the team to average 10 or more assist points per game created was Julius Randle, who's now gone. They needed playmaking. They now have 2 of the 5 or 6 best pull-up three-point shooters in the NBA, at least by volume. I think one of their thoughts in making this trade was, we are going to hopefully be able to pull Victor Wembanyama into pick and roll behind the three-point line, far away from the basket, and that's going to open stuff up for us offensively. They're going to be a monster in transition now. They have so many athletes there with LaMelo Ball. This makes a lot of sense for me, for them. I think LaMelo checks a lot of the boxes that they would be looking for. And then for Charlotte, how often have we said teams should sell high more? The reality is very few teams have what I think we both consider the most important trait that any front office can have, which is self-awareness, which is the ability to say, what we have is not working, and we are wasting our time, our assets, our money, everything by moving forward with something that we know we can't compete with. The Hornets looked at themselves in the mirror, honestly, said, we do not have a championship future, and took what I think was a wise step back. I really like it for both teams. I gave the Wolves a B+. I gave the Hornets a B when I graded it for CBS Sports. I know opinions have been very, very divided, and like I said, I think any answer is probably reasonable. Where did you fall on this?
I really like it for the Hornets, and let's start with the Wolves first, because I don't really like it for them. Because you're talking about them realizing something about themselves, that they're not quite good enough to compete against the Thunder, against the Spurs, so they had to do something, and it's been rumored that they were going to shake things up somehow. So what was that going to look like? It always felt like they were going to do something with Randall's salary, maybe DiVincenzo's, and the 1 draft pick they had to trade, 2 if you include the pick that became Joshua Jefferson. And what can they get with that? Like a borderline $40 million player. And they've been linked to guys like I mean, we talked about De'Aaron Fox. I don't know if they were linked to Trae Young, but John Morant's been mentioned, and then there's Josh Giddey and probably a couple other names I've been thinking. And LaMelo Ball fits the criteria of like the type of guy they could barely make it work. So just because I agree that with their assessment doesn't mean I don't agree with like the path that they took to do this, because this is just another all-in move, another like that of this continual pattern where this Wolves team, they just go all in as soon as they replenish draft equity to do so. They did it in 2022 with Rudy, had nothing left to trade. Did it in 2024 with for Rob Dillingham. As soon as they opened up that one first round pick in 2031, they do it again now for LaMelo. Now, one first for LaMelo and like a couple of swaps, and it might not seem like a lot for LaMelo, but for the Wolves, like I said, like that is their one pick remaining, and it's 7 years out. Any pick that far out can go up and down in value, and the Hornets could probably do a lot with it. So once again, the Wolves now have even fewer moves to make. Like at least when they did the Rudy Gobert trade, they had some seconds left over. They had some interesting guys. They don't have anything. They have 1 second round pick left to trade. I'll just pull up their sheet already while we're at it. They have 1 second round pick to trade, and it's a fake second. It's a Memphis one in 2030. It's 31 through 50 protected. It's not going to convey. So all the other picks that they have, they cannot be traded because the Stepien rule is frozen. They're done. Like this was it. This was the last move. So they got no margin for error. They've got literally like very little can go wrong. In LaMelo, he's been injury prone. Any injury to really any of these players, and it could cause a bad stretch. The one thing I'll give it is that, okay, this probably raises their ceiling a little bit, because if LaMelo continues to play like he did last year, maybe they could take a step further. But I think that's just like you're asking for a lot for like everything to hit at the same time. So I don't know if they got meaningfully better. I'm not totally sure on that. And I'm just not sure how, when you're looking at how the Spurs series played out, I'm not sure anything changes if you had LaMelo in for Randall and Naz Reid. If anything, I don't know. Do you think they match up better or worse?
I mean, they're an entirely different team now, right? Naz Reid was one of their best players in that series. But if you're looking about what changes after that series, the defining strategic decision of that series for San Antonio was, we're just going to double Anthony Edwards every time down the court, and there's nothing you can do about it as Minnesota, because Dante DiVincenzo was out. They didn't have enough ball handling. They didn't have enough shooting either. Now, I think with LaMelo Ball, they should have both. I don't know that you can double Anthony Edwards quite as easily. I think they're going to be one of the best offenses in the NBA, whether or not, A, LaMelo can translate offensively into the playoffs, and B, if they can be an elite defense. And I mean, they've given up their identity here, essentially. They're no longer the giant team with the 3 bigs. They have 1 big, and we'll see how Berenjay does. Longtime listeners of this podcast know I am a big Berenjay fan, but he is a ways off. So I'm not going to sit here and say he is going to help them retain their defensive identity. I would just ask you, like, what move would you have made if you were Minnesota? Like when you said you don't know if this makes them better, if this raises their ceiling. I mean, of course you don't, because no such move existed. That's the position that they were in, where you only had 1 first round pick to trade, and you were forced, like, look, Naz Reid was a good trade asset, but you weren't going to trade Naz Reid for Giannis, right? Realistically, there was those reports that they weren't going to put Berenjay or Jaden McDaniels on the table for Giannis. So it was like, could you trade Gobert and Naz for Giannis? And the answer to that was no. There was nothing they feasibly could have done that we would have just automatically said, no matter what, this puts them on the level of Minnesota or Oklahoma City. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
They didn't have the chips for that. And even if they did have the chips, it's kind of like, so what? Oklahoma City and San Antonio are so far ahead of the rest of the pack in the Western Conference, and really, frankly, in the NBA, at least longer term, that I think the way you have to approach roster building in the West especially is that you kind of have to be irresponsible. You have to be willing to take risks that you might not take under ordinary circumstances. If the Thunder and the Spurs didn't exist, if their entire teams retired, if the franchise is folded, I would not have advised Minnesota to make this trade. But because those teams do exist, your only chance of competing with them is taking the biggest high risk, high reward swings that you can and hoping that they connect. Because the reality here is the only world in which Minnesota can beat San Antonio and or Oklahoma City. And I shouldn't say and or, I should just say and. You have to beat them both. Is that LaMelo Ball is an all NBA player next to Anthony Edwards. If he is, you have a chance. I'm not saying you're going to do it. I'm not saying you're the favorites. But considering a chance is the best that any team can really do against the Thunder or Spurs, I think getting up to a chance was a worthwhile decision. So if you weren't going to be a LaMelo trade guy, what was your move if you were running Minnesota?
I don't know, because I don't know what's acceptable. Because the part that really is killing me is that they had to trade Naz Reid in this. Like,
you got to give something to get something, Yossi.
I know, and I understand that. And I'm not the biggest Naz Reid fan by any means, but again, for them, that is like they have nothing in the front court. Like, they went from the supersized team, now they're pretty small, they're light. It's going to be really tough. We'll get into how they could add another forward, add to the front court. They gave up a lot, and I understand why they did it. Now, as far as like, I probably would have done something a little safer. Just, can you flip? Could you have taken, I don't know, like DeJounte Murray, someone who's making around the same money as Randall? It's really boring. You're probably just kind of staying the same. That's probably all I would have done, though. Just something like that. Get it like a 35 to or less $1 million point guard. Like, if see if later Kyrie Irving becomes available. I would want to have sent out the least amount as possible. Now, I will say, part of what the Wolves did here is they're also potentially doing this to get a commitment from Anthony Edwards, because he did not qualify for the Supermax this year because he missed his 65 game rule. Had he qualified, I would suspect he would have signed it already. He would be able to sign it next year. But I would suspect
he would have signaled it. Yeah.
I think he would probably sign it. I think no matter what, as soon as he qualifies, he's probably going to sign it. With that said, he does have a little bit of leverage now because he hasn't qualified for it yet. He can't commit to it yet. And I have to imagine there's like pressure internally to do something. We're already starting to hear speculation about Anthony Edwards' future. Now he's like the new big trade possibility over the few years. And this is something that we've kind of had in the back of our mind since the moment they did the Rudy Gobert trade. Like, what if this goes wrong? They might eventually have to blow it up and trade Edwards. So I would imagine that this pressured the Wolves to add a little pressure to do something, step up their offer. So while they are trading for Ball, I think I would suspect they're going to get maybe internally they're getting a commitment now. I don't know, or at least like, increasing the chance that he will sign the extension next year. So regardless, they got to get him on that extension first, deal with the future. If it does crumble down later, at least then you could maximize his value if he extends it. So if he extends on it. So, but with that, so that's the other element. I'll give him that, but let's talk about the roster now. Anything else you want to touch on, like the implications, or should we kind of try to figure out how do we get him a forward?
So I have a quick technical question. When does their 2032 first unfreeze?
My mind's not totally working. I believe it's like in 3 or 4 years they have to wait.
So
now it's been one, so maybe another 2.
Yeah, I think once you've done 3 out of a 4-year period, that's when it unfreezes. So I'm just wondering, because something I'm thinking about just a little in advance, I assume they're not going to have to make a big trade after next season. Like, this team will still be fresh enough. I'm thinking about the 2028 offseason now, when their 2035 first round pick will unlock. And also they'll have their 2032 swap to trade, which I imagine will be pretty valuable at that point if they do feel the need to make a big trade. Just something to keep in the back of your minds.
No, you are right to think of that way. I'm sure teams are already thinking like, how can I get that 2035 Wolves pick? Because it's going to be available.
We had the same conversation with the Suns when they traded 2031, didn't we? I guess they were their 2033 is frozen, but is their 2034 going to be up for grabs next year? I assume. Anyway, well, that's even kind of irrelevant because the lottery rules are going to change. But yes, let's find them a forward. I think the obvious question here is, can you redirect Josh Green
Yeah.
in some way, shape, or form at 14.7 million for another forward? I was a little like, when I stopped and I thought about it, it seems for a variety of reasons like Miles Bridges is not long for Charlotte. I guess he was just a little too expensive for Minnesota, given their hard cap concerns at the first apron. So maybe that's why Miles Bridges didn't go to Minnesota in this deal. But can you take Josh Green, turn him around, trade him for a forward? And I have an immediate who says no, which is
So
Josh Green.
hold on.
And okay,
Hold on. So
go
let's
ahead.
let's get. I do want to just get to. We got to tier this. So I want to talk about how they made this work, and then we'll get into it.
All right.
Because I have 2 tiers of guys that they could go after. So the Wolves currently, they still have Randall on the team. They even still have Joshua Jefferson's draft rights. This is where they are right now. So they're originally going to just dump Randall, trade Jefferson, create that $33 million trade exception. They were going to be under the first apron, open up the full mid-level, and ideally probably just stay under the tax. That seemed for a couple days like that was the pathway they were going to go. So when it became apparent that they're in the mix for LaMelo, then you can look at the team and say, okay, who are they sending out? Naz Reid or Gobert. But however, the Randall trade's still ongoing. It hasn't happened yet. So one of the easier ways to make the salary matching component work is by including Randall, because once you start bringing in a max level player to pair with Edwards, you're going to want to exceed that first apron. So here's their post cap salary after the post trade payroll after doing the trade. So they are slightly above the first apron. They are doing a 100% salary match by expanding the Randall trade. It's going to be Randall and Reid for LaMelo and Josh Green. And with that, it comes out just a little more. They're sending out just a little bit more salaries than they're taking in. So now they cannot exceed that $221 million amount, which is going to be important because now they have $11 million to spend on their next 4 roster spots. I'm already going to lock in Isaiah Evans with one of them. I figure they're going to give him the rookie minimum. So they've got about 9.6 in space to fill out 3 roster spots, which part of it could go to the tax mid level. But so I'll just quickly touch on the tax mid level, and then I'll let you touch on some guys, because they could sign someone. It's $6 million, but there's nobody. I looked at the market, like for the type of players they need. I think maybe you can get like Harrison Barnes. And then if you're very lucky, like if the market's horrible on like John Collins, maybe you can get him on like a 1+1.
No way.
Yeah, that's it though. Like there's really no, like there's Dean Wade, but it sounds like he's gonna get close to the full mid level. So the tax mid level probably doesn't even get used. And I would anticipate that at least 2 of these spots go to minimum salary. So I'll kick it to you. How do you want to start?
If they were going to use tax mid-level, the guy that came to mind for me was Kenrich Williams, if he gets his option declined by Oklahoma City. But Kenrich Williams is a nice bench guy. He's not starting. Sure. So my immediate who says no is Josh Green and Terrence Shannon for PJ Washington.
Okay. So if the Wolves do the trade as is, then they're going to be limited to trading whatever they have for equal or less salary. So you're talking about combining Josh Green and Terrence Shannon. Now, Josh Green wouldn't be able to be aggregated if they officially acquire him. So
yeah, I was thinking of expanding the trade.
So they'll want to expand it. They'll have never brought in even Josh Green. So then you can potentially bring in PJ Washington. You're taking out Shannon. I don't know if that might be enough. I think you might
put Phillips in, but same idea.
Yeah, or maybe I'm thinking like you might have to put in DiVincenzo. I think that just it's a little easier to make the money work. But I would agree though that in this scenario, when they're trying to get a forward like a PJ Washington, I guess Terrence Shannon has to go, because what else are they offering to incentivize a team like Dallas from giving up PJ Washington?
They have no value. The one thing they do have is that Josh Green is expiring. So if there's a bad $15 million contract out there that they could go for, yeah, then that might make sense. The problem is how many bad $15 million contracts are attached to good players? The answer is not many. You could maybe revisit that at the trade deadline, but like you said,
Yeah.
then they couldn't aggregate him, right?
Yeah. So there's a couple guys I want to mention because that is PJ Washington's on my higher tier. Let's say they do the trade as is and they want to trade Josh Green for somebody. They can bring back Dorian Finney-Smith, a guy like Royce O'Neal. There's Najee Marshall also from the Mavs. Jalen Smith comes to mind. That is where you could try to do the 1-for-1 and then you include probably Terrence Shannon as a sweetener. I don't know what his value is. He had that one great game in the playoffs, but maybe there's a team out there that views him highly enough where they could do something like this. So then you talked about PJ Washington, who I would say is probably my number one target if I'm the Wolves, just based on where their payroll is. Having him making $19.8 million would be just an unbelievable value. I think that goes without saying. So with that in mind, though, there are a couple other names. Do you have any others before I get to mine?
I'm looking at the spot track rankings of all the power forward salaries, and I'm having some dark thoughts. Like, could they have gotten Grant Williams instead of Josh Green in this?
Yeah,
like, how much faith do I have in 2026 Grant Williams?
So I'm curious, did the Wolves just not want Grant Williams because he has another year left on his contract?
Yeah. My guess, it's one of two things. It's the extra year in the contract. It's the thought that maybe Josh Green might be playable. It might also, like, maybe it's a locker room thing that you don't want to bring Grant Williams into. I know he's rubbed some people the wrong way, but if they're planning to make a trade, it obviously makes more sense to get Green as the expiring rather than Grant Williams as the guy with the extra year. The other crazy thought I had is, like, if Minnesota is just taking swings on talent, like, and not thinking about anything else, like, which is sort of what they did with LaMelo. It's obviously more complicated. LaMelo's a star. Would you want to take a swing on Patrick Williams?
No.
No? Could you get Chicago to give you some second round picks back just to, give you a little bit of maneuverability?
Oh, I see where you're going with this. I would, if I'm talking like Josh Green or Pat Williams, I'm going to want, they have a lot of seconds. I'd want like 6 at least, right? Probably not even enough.
I'm just like, yeah, because you're getting several years of relief. You might even ask for a first if you're I guess the Bulls don't have any. Yeah. The Bulls don't have any external first, and they're now trading internal first for that. Yeah. But just the concept of, like, just take a swing on talent, get like a decent size salary on a multi-year deal, see if it works, and if it doesn't, get enough seconds that, like, you have a little bit of maneuverability. But I mean, can I throw out a minimum flyer for the bench?
Sure.
Jonathan Isaac, when he inevitably gets waived. You only need like 10 minutes. Yeah, if you only need like 10 minutes of bench play anyway, he's good at that.
I mean, I don't know if he can give you 10 minutes. He couldn't do it for the Magic last year. But I see where you're going. If he could, that's a good minimum.
Again, we're talking about risk profile here. We're doing the Daryl Morey. Yeah. You have to increase your risk profile if you're going to compete with the 2017 Warriors. And there are now 2 2017 Warriors in the West. It's the Spurs and the Thunder. So you got to take some risk. A Laker fan suggested to me Jared Vanderbilt and Dalton Connect for Josh Green. And I'm like, for a second, I thought about it because Jared Vanderbilt was good when he was in Minnesota. He has 2 years left, and it's like, what a bailout that would be for the Lakers to get out of that extra year.
Nah, they don't have enough seconds. They only have like 1 second.
Yeah. No, but like they'd have to want Jared Vanderbilt, which they wouldn't.
So let's say they could expand it by rerouting Green and including DiVincenzo, because I just have a hard time seeing them keep DiVincenzo at this point, at this $12.5 million. Like, every dollar counts now. They need active players. So if you can clear off both of them in this opens up a lot of money. So I talked about PJ Washington, a little cheaper option. I don't think they could get him, but like Santi Aldama that's a very interesting player to slide in if you could. Probably pretty attainable. Keldon Johnson, right? Like, could they do Shannon and Keldon? Shannon and it's.
I don't know if the Spurs want to help them. And either way, I don't know how valuable
Yeah.
Keldon is anyway. He was not a factor in the finals. Can I
Okay.
throw out the more disappointing concepts here?
I'm hold on. Let me finish. Let me get to a disappointing one. Well, first of all, yeah, I talked about PJ, where you can do that, and keep in mind they still have room to use the tax mid-level in all this, so I could even just slide that in if they are able to get a guy like Kenrich Williams. Like why not? I'll just write him in. Let's just have some fun with it. And then the one disappointing one I would get to, and I'm just trying to increase the salaries though. That's the biggest thing now I'm doing with this exercise is a guy like Kyle Kuzma.
That's who I was about to say.
Where this is including his unlikely incentive, so those count against the aprons. So you can still field a roster while using the tax mid level with him at 23, assuming you're moving off Green, you're moving off DiVincenzo, you're moving off Terrence Shannon. Yeah, it all still works.
Yeah, you're basically saying there that you're trading 2 players in Green and DiVincenzo, and you're getting 2 players back in Kuzma and whoever you can get for the taxpayer mid level. But yeah, I mean, look, as somebody who watched and covered the 2020 and more importantly, the 2021 Lakers very closely, I will always believe there is a winning player inside of Kyle Kuzma. That guy has not come out in a long time. So yeah, I that's a pretty disappointing option.
Yeah.
The other name that came to mind for me, Jonathan Kuminga. Again, just a talent play. I think Atlanta would probably love to get DiVincenzo's bird rights, maybe extend him on a favorable deal. Like they have Corey Kispert in sort of that, sort of shooter role. Corey Kispert was not good for them last year and didn't really factor in much. So maybe DiVincenzo could be kind of a longer term play for them.
Yeah. I forgot to take off DiVincenzo's incentive. So yeah, that works too. You could still use a full mid level, use a bunch of minimums, and bring in Kuminga, who makes even more, counts more against the team salary if he opted in.
I got another idea that I just thought of. This one, I'm about to blow your mind here. Ready? Okay. We're going to move Jaden McDaniels to power forward. Could we make Christian Braun work?
Okay, so I had another nugget in mind, and it was Cam Johnson.
So we're thinking similarly. I think Denver would be so eager to get off of Christian Braun that they would, and if they could get you could get draft capital, you could get a swap from them maybe if you gave them DiVincenzo and took back Christian Braun.
I think Cam Johnson is like the best case scenario in all this, and also best case, like highest end salary. So this is including his incentive. So if they take him in, okay, maybe you don't use the tax mid level. All right, whatever, no big deal. You could still make it work though. Then you just add a fourth, fifth minimum salary, and you have Cam Johnson here, where I think it's unlikely because one, Denver wouldn't want to trade him to Minnesota, but just the thing is the Denver's going to try to want to save money, just dump him cleanly. So if they want to get in on this multi-team trade, chances are they'll take back minimal salaries. But I would, again, we'll see, like maybe the Lakers or the Clippers or Chicago might be interested in Cam Johnson, maybe Memphis with that big trade exception. Like maybe there's still a market out there for him, but at the very highest end, this is someone they could get. But like as we go through this exercise, it feels like Kuzma is like honestly what's in the realm of possibilities. Either him or like Royce O'Neal, because the Suns, they want to save a bunch of money. That would be the cheapest way, and then they can keep Shannon and DiVincenzo in the process. Where do you think this lands?
Yeah, I think it's either they're going to take back some really questionable salary and like hopefully do some rehabilitation, or somebody is going to like Terrence Shannon a lot, and that's going to open a door that we maybe don't foresee. But I'm not feeling great about that component of this. So
yeah.
Tim Conley, you have worked miracles before, so I send you off to your work.
Yeah. So then I guess we should move on to Charlotte then.
Can I immediately can I just jump off the deep end with you?
Okay.
Why shouldn't they take on Joel Embiid for more draft capital now?
I don't think that's possible.
No, you can expand the trade and send Philly more salary.
I don't just by the looks of it, I just don't think it's possible. Even if it's Gobert and McDaniels, I don't think it's
No, oh no,
possible.
no, I'm not saying Minnesota. I'm saying Charlotte.
Oh, I thought we were still on
No,
Minnesota.
no,
Okay.
no, that's ridiculous. No, Charlotte.
Okay. Okay. So, Charlotte. Well, hold on. I didn't get too much into my analysis. You already summarized with them, but I'm with you. I think that when you look at this Hornets team, I think there's a pretty good chance that whatever happened this year isn't guaranteed to replicate next year. Before the Mirage part, LaMelo played a lot. I think he only missed like 10-ish games. I might be off on that.
Yeah, he played 72 on the dot.
So that's number one. Number two, he had his best year. It was like in the realm of like all NBA. Wasn't quite there. He didn't make it, but like he was that good, and he was really the core, like the engine to their offense. And I think like last season, you can look at it and say that, wow, like most teams would look at what the Hornets just did and be like, this is great. Let's extend everyone. Let's push it forward. Let's build on this. I think the one proof of concept you can take away from this is that Con Knipple, Brandon Miller, these guys are for sure things. Let's invest in them. I would imagine Brandon Miller is going to now get a nice payday. Like he was already going to get extended. Now this makes it a lot easier. We could talk about that. I just don't think there's a guarantee that LaMelo can do this again next year. One, the games, me could just get injured again. And then two, if there's just like a little bit of regression, then I don't think the Hornets look nearly as good as they did. Like it really, like everything came together at the right time. So I commend them for doing this. Like very few teams would do this, and I think they sold relatively high on him. Naz Reid's a great addition. Like I couldn't have thought of, when I do LaMelo trades, think of him going to Toronto or think of him going to, I don't know, the Clippers or Miami. Like Naz Reid is probably the best player they reasonably could have gotten when you look at all these other teams and what like the best player they could have offered. And they got that really valuable Wolves pick. So they've been needing a stretch big man too. Really not that many. Like it's so hard to get a stretch big man, and they got like really one of the more respectable ones. And he could add his number, that 23 million. He could start or come off the bench. I mean, so I really like it for the Hornets, and they just have so much flexibility now. They saved $30 million in the trade because they don't have to take Randall back, and they are doing it Josh Green straight up for Naz Reid. That's one trade, and then they're doing a second trade where it's basically LaMelo Ball for nothing. So they're going to create a massive $40.8 million trade exception, which is like fake cap space, where they can, after re-signing Kobe White, I think they're going to start him high. They have about $48 million in tax space. They can still use the entire exception, and we could discuss what that might be used for, and even still like a good portion of the mid-level. But I like that they reset their books a little bit because Miller's deal is coming up. Where do you want to start with this?
Yeah, I think they're going to be worse next year, and that's not just a function of the trade. Like they were an enormously healthy team last year. I mean, I guess they're not going to have the 4-14 start hanging over them like they did last year, but like I'm looking at the Hornets now. One of the quiet areas of value in this trade is that I think there was a good chance they were going to be a top 6 team next year. And now I think they're going to be a play-in team, or like maybe even number 11 in the East. And the lottery is very favorable to teams like that. They control their own first round pick. They have Dallas top 2 protected. They have a handful of other picks. Like their pick control is really, really valuable. And I think they're looking at this and saying, we're probably not done adding young core cheap guys. I don't know if they have anybody yet that you can say is the best player on a championship team. And that's something that they're going to have to reckon with over the next few years. Like, let's see what Con Knipple becomes. Let's see what Brandon Miller becomes, and kind of go from there on what we need to do to build around them. Like, I think Kobe White is a totally serviceable starting point guard, and I think the contract is reasonable. I agree with you. They should start it high and have it go down. See, maybe they like Christian Anderson enough. Like they draft him at number 18. They clearly do. He'll probably play a pretty meaningful role. Like I don't think they need to be in any hurry. Brandon Miller's 23 and Knipple is 20. My thought, if I were them, is they have all this financial flexibility. Why not use that to take on bad money and kind of treat that as part of the return for LaMelo? This is why I bring up Joel Embiid. Can you imagine the spacing of a starting five of Kobe White, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller, Naz Reid, and Joel Embiid? You're not going to get many stops, but that would be really, really fun offensively. You could probably get some pretty good draft capital from Philly back to do that. I know that, like, look, Joel Embiid is Joel Embiid, right? He's going to play probably 40 games a year. He's not going to replace LaMelo Ball as like the franchise player, but pun intended, get a little bit of buzz out of him. And worst case scenario, I don't think they're planning to make another big splash for at least a few years. By the time the Embiid contract becomes troublesome, like he expires right as Con Knipple's rookie contract kicks in. There's no overlap there, but you could use him as an expiring contract in 2 years. So that's my pitch. Trade for Joel Embiid. If it's not Joel Embiid, use this financial flexibility to get draft picks to take on more bad money because you've got the flexibility to do it. And I don't think there's any real impetus for you to be like, once you've traded LaMelo Ball, I think the fans understand you're not trying to win 50 games next year.
At what point is enough draft picks enough? 12 first-round picks, 18 second-round picks. So I do want to touch on some of these picks that the Wolves got because the 2033, that's a pretty that's pretty self-explanatory. They got then 2 swaps. So they got the 2029 swap. So this one only conveys if the Wolves fall within that top 5 protected range, which, hey, with lottery reform,
new lottery, yeah,
higher, more teams involved, flatter odds. It takes, one really bad year. You never know. And that's after 2 years from now, who knows where the Wolves will be by then.
If you really think about the math on that pick, it's a 1 out of 6 chance because there's 30 teams in the NBA and that covers 5 slots. Now, Minnesota is probably going to be too good for that to matter, but that's a few years down the line. So once you get into the new lottery, like, you never know. The other thing I want to point out about the idea of having too many draft picks, I think there are 2 classes of draft picks in the NBA right now. I think there are draft picks before 2029, and I think there are draft picks after 2029. Knowing the possibility that the lottery is going to change after 2029, I personally, if I were a team that wasn't trying to win a championship in the next few years, would really prioritize getting picks after 2029 because chaos is a ladder, my friend. And if you don't know what the rules are, you might get a pick that becomes substantially more valuable after the rules change. So you're getting it at a discount. They already did that once with Minnesota 2033. If I could diversify a little bit, not be totally stocked into the 2033 draft, I'd be like, Philly, can I get your 2032 and a 2031 swap?
Yeah.
Something like that.
So, and then they also got a 2030 swap. Where
that's
that one. So that one, the Wolves already swapped out to San Antonio, and
top
previously,
one protected, though.
And San Antonio had already swapped that out with Dallas. So basically, that one only conveys if the Hornets are basically better than all those teams and the Wolves are the worst of all those teams and the Spurs need to have done a swap first. Something like that.
It's top 1 protected, though. Yeah. So if Minnesota gets the number 1 overall pick, then Charlotte gets the number 1 overall pick.
So look, there's no limit to getting more draft picks. And if I had to guess what they do with this trade exception, even without this trade exception, they've got other trade exceptions. They've got an $8.2 million, $7 million. They've got the mid-level. They can take money with that. So maybe they just try to preserve this as much as possible because they could use this next year even. So I would guess there is going to be some of that, but it does seem like they are also trying to find certain players that they really identify and want to commit to. They did so with Kobe White. They did so with Naz Reid. So I don't know if there's like so they're into them. You've got Knipple, you've got Miller. Miller's about to get paid. You got all their rookies or sophomores. I do wonder if at some point they don't have to do like a superstar trade. Like again, like what if Jaylen Brown, he's being linked there. I don't even think they're quite there yet, But I do wonder if maybe there's more something like in a year from now, like more in the realm of a Jaren Jackson Jr., Larry Markkinen type trade, like what the Jazz just did to get Jaren Jackson Jr. Because I think with Reed at this contract, like I said, you could start him, have him come off the bench. I think they still need to upgrade their front court. Like I would still look at doing that. Their backcourt's pretty set. Their wing rotation, you're pretty committed to a couple guys. So I think the will hedge, like look for some more ways to get more assets, but let's also find some undervalued guys that we really like.
Well, having all these picks, what it really does is gives you the chance to be opportunistic because you can afford basically anybody. So you can kind of just sit around and wait and say, like, wait, that team is trading that guy, or that team is having apron issues, or like whatever it is. You have the chance to get in on anybody. I think Oklahoma City with Jared McCain is kind of the perfect example of this. Where, look, did the Thunder need Jared McCain? No, but they had the picks and he made sense for them and he really helped them. And for whatever reason, Philly decided we don't want to have Jared McCain on a rookie scale deal anymore. So the Thunder pounced. And I think there are higher end versions of that where you're not talking about guys making $4 million, you're talking about guys making $20 million or $30 million. I like that the Hornets are in a position to do that. So yeah, they're basically they're flexible and liquid. That's what picks are. We say this all the time. Picks are liquidity. They're the chance to go buy the right players when they become available. And they make you not tied to to circumstance, in that Minnesota, without having picks, was so restricted in the sort of players that they could chase. That just isn't really going to apply to Charlotte. They can take this in basically whatever direction they want. I mean, I brought up Joel Embiid, like Paul George makes sense as well. If you could get a first round pick from Philly to swap Miles Bridges for Paul George, I'd probably be happy to do that. If you could go to Milwaukee and say, hey, are you guys committed to Kel'el Ware? We'd give up a first for him. Like, you could go in 100 different directions here. And I don't think any of them would necessarily be wrong. Just go get players that you want, or go get assets for your cap flexibility.
I think maybe Paul George, like that example, might be a little palatable because it's only 2 years left. Embiid at 3 years, I think that gets a little complicated. Yeah, that's right before Knippel's contract kicks in. But at the same time, having a 35% max guy for that long, giving you not enough value, it'll hamstring them. So I don't know if they go quite that high unless the Sixers really give up a lot of draft equity. But I get where you're going with this, and I do see them being facilitators over the next year or so.
I really look at Toronto in this respect too, because what do we say all the time? The Raptors have picks. The Raptors are being aggressive. The Raptors tried to get LaMelo. The Raptors have a bunch of bad contracts. You guys need to dump somebody to get, well, this is a good transition. You need to dump somebody to get Kawhi Leonard. How much are you willing to pay us to do that?
Right. And then after that, I mean, I'm thinking, especially with the rate of these contracts we're seeing, Trae Young getting a max, Austin Reaves getting a max. I anticipate at this rate, Jalen Duren probably gets a max offer sheet. I do feel like Brandon Miller, if he doesn't get the max, he might get something like kind of close to it, the Bane max. What do you think?
Yeah, the Bane max sounds about right, or like a flat max or something where you start at 25%, you just stay there. Like whatever it is, I think it'll be reasonably close to the max. I would not bat an eyelash at giving him a max. You know how I feel about 25% maxes. I think they're just very hard to screw up if the guy stays healthy, because you're getting the best years of their career. Brandon Miller is 23. I don't think there's any amount you could realistically pay him that would be like a terrible overpay in his age 27 season.
Their cap sheet's just so clean. Miles Bridges will be off the books. Grant Williams will be off the books. They have got $95 million below the luxury tax. So
this reminds me, quick question. Can they get cap space next summer? Because I have a way to use it.
Yeah, I've got them at once they re-sign Miller, yeah, they could still get to like 30 something, in which case they could dump Salon, Trey Mann. They could get to max cap space. Absolutely.
Cason Wallace offer sheet. Very easy. Make the Thunder sweat. Why not?
Assuming that doesn't get done, I would guess they figure something out.
Or pressure them into a trade. Like, I think one of the reasons that the Hornets didn't want to keep LaMelo long term was that they didn't think it was defensively viable to have Knippel, Miller, and Ball as their big three. I mean, you're losing a lot of shot creation in that exchange. But if you could get Case and Wallace, that does address the defensive issues, like not fully because you still don't have a rim protector, but that goes a long way on that front.
Yeah. Anything else on the Hornets, or should we move on to the next trade rumor that is starting to dominate the market?
On
The
to
news
Kawhi.
waves. All right. So the first, let me ask you this: what do you make of the potential of Kawhi being interested in rejoining San Antonio or Toronto?
It's kind of funny to me. Is he that much of a creature of habit? Like, it's funny when Mark Stein reported this again, or was it Jake Fisher? It was one of them on their Substack. Reported that he was only interested in Toronto and San Antonio. For a second, I just thought, why aren't the Lakers on that list? He'd have to move if he had to go to San Antonio or Toronto. Like, is it really is he so idiosyncratic that he can only play for teams that he's already played for? I mean, they both make varying degrees of sense on Kawhi's side. We can talk about it on the team side. I feel like Kawhi's preference is to extend with the Clippers. I don't know if the Clippers are eager to do that. I don't know if they feel able to do that given the aspiration situation. But yeah, I mean, it kind of feels to me like he's saying, I am not going to cooperate with you on letting you trade me anywhere. You'd better pay me. And if you do trade me, I am going to be a pain in making getting to a place that I want to go. I was surprised that Golden State wasn't on that list. Maybe Golden State could negotiate its way onto that list. That being said, the fact that this didn't happen before the draft when the number 11 pick could have been in play suggests to me that Golden State sniffed around and one way or another determined that there was not going to be a trade there. So
Yeah.
among Toronto and San Antonio, how do you feel about them?
He didn't want to be with them back then. Why now? That's confusing me. What changed?
So Toronto, I think he just wanted to live in LA. Like that's when he left. I think it was as simple as he never intended to go to Toronto. He didn't have a say in that. He got diverted there. He was trying to get to LA. Now he is in LA and he's near the end of his career. He's probably looking at this and saying, when I left to join the Clippers, I thought I don't want to spend a decade in Toronto. Now it's more like, well, I can spend 2 or 3 more years there. Sure, that's not a problem. I think San Antonio, the relationship just broke down in ways that time was kind of the only thing that could potentially heal it. Again, I don't know if the relationship is healed. It's kind of funny to say this, considering he won a championship there. I think Kawhi Leonard is probably the single most disliked player in the entire NBA by his former fan base. I can't think of a single fan base who lost a player and dislikes that player more now than Kawhi. Like the all-time answer was LeBron with the Cavs, but then he went back. It was so bad that in 2023, Greg Popovich had to grab a mic during a game and tell the Spurs fans to stop booing him. Like, I've never seen that before, and we'll never see that again. That's how toxic it got. And I think there was reasonable blame on both sides. So it seemed like, obviously, during, I think, the 2017-18 season, when Kawhi played 9 games, something like that, there was some real disagreement internally about how to handle his, I think it was a knee injury and a quad injury. Tony Parker kind of came out and said something to the press that was a little inflammatory. Like, I think it was something to the effect of like, oh, my injury was 100 times worse and I played through it. There was, after they won the 2014 title, they still made Kawhi wait a year to get his rookie extension because they needed to save cap space to sign LaMarcus Aldridge. Maybe there was bad blood there. Like, I think the relationship just broke down in a way that he sort of had to leave. And now maybe he has grown enough and the organization in San Antonio has grown enough that he's just like, you know what? I'm in my mid 30s. I'm ready to make peace with this. And I could go win more championships there. So it would be a good place for me to get to. So that's sort of where I'm at with it.
Yeah.
I will not pretend to be a Kawhi Leonard whisperer. I don't know what's going through his head, but we should still talk about these teams as destinations nonetheless.
I was just on Raptors Republic podcast with S. Barhini of The Athletic, and he was unclear, like he didn't really understand it. Maybe it could be like a leverage type of thing with the extension, which I'd understand that perspective. At the same time, I'm also coming in from the whole aspiration element of this. We still don't know what's going to happen, what Kawhi's standing is going to be with the Clippers moving on. And I just think the fact that he is in trade rumors, I it is, maybe it is about like an extension dispute with the Clippers, what that number ends up being. I do also still have like maybe in the back of my mind the idea that he just might not be able to continue with the Clippers depending on what the conclusion of this investigation is. And if you're the Clippers, you are trying to extract as much value as possible. You saw what they got for Zubac. I think they're not going to give up Kawhi that easily. So let's talk about these teams, what they've got to offer. Who do you want to start with?
Start with Toronto because it's a little bit cleaner. Like they just have all their own draft picks, very straightforward. Some amount of draft capital. I presume the Clippers would want picks after that 2029 lottery. So yeah, like if you could get 2 picks in the 2030s for Kawhi, I would be totally on board. I suspect that the Clippers would ask for Colin Murray-Boyles, and I think the Raptors would treat that as an absolute non-starter, as would I. There is no player on the market, given where Toronto is, that I would be comfortable trading Colin Murray-Boyles for. He is the second most valuable asset on that team. So that is just going to be a no.
Yeah.
The problem here is matching money. So you have the Raptors, I think like 5 million below the first apron.
So yes, they're about 5 million, but it's going to be higher than that because this is the practice sheet I did. Yeah, this is what it's probably most actually going to look like, where Mamu's going to opt out, and it's S seems to think they're going to decline Magbo, and then the guarantee battles pick up the option of Trace Jackson Davis. They already picked up Jamal Shed, in which case they're more like 10 million under the first apron.
Okay. But the idea I was going to get at is, in theory, like you could legally match Kawhi's salary with RJ Barrett's expiring, Grady Dick, and Jacoby Walter. The problem with doing that is that you're trading 3 for 1, and you're basically going to the first apron hard cap. And you would only have a first apron hard cap, by the way, because you're taking in more salary than you're sending out with like 4 or 5 empty roster spots. So you can't do that. Their only way for this to be feasible would be to send out a contract that I presume the Clippers wouldn't want. I think Brandon Ingram is the least objectionable of those deals at 2 years and like 82 million. I guess in theory, he could be a replacement for Kawhi as like a scoring small forward. He is obviously worse than Kawhi in basically every regard. So I don't know how eager the Clippers would be. I think the Clippers might argue that's a negative salary. And I mean, I think we're lower on Brandon Ingram than most. We would agree with that. He's a better salary than Emmanuel Quickley at 32.5 million for 3 more years. He's a better contract than Jakob Poeltl, who is making top of the non-all-star center market money, when he is not even like a starting caliber player anymore. So I realistically, to make the money work, Ingram, Quickley, or Poeltl basically has to be in the deal. And I don't think the Clippers would want any of them. So then the question becomes, can you find a third team to send one of those contracts to? No easy task. Or how much extra value can the Clippers extract for taking on bad money? That becomes a more interesting question. And given where the Clippers are, I actually wouldn't mind. Like, you know what? If we can get 3 picks and 2 swaps, but we'll take on Jakob Poeltl in addition to giving you Kawhi, I'd be into that as the Clippers. I don't know how I'd feel about it as the Raptors, but I'd be into that as the Clippers.
So here's how I think this would go down if there's going to be a negotiation. I think they pretty much view every non-Scotty Barnes starter as probably just neutral salary at best, where RJ, he's expiring, doesn't really hurt them long term. But again, like not really a guy I really think the Clippers have in their long-term plans. Poeltl, negative value, Quickley, negative value. If Ingram's contract was a year longer, I'd say that's for sure negative value. I think it's probably a little more towards neutral, but the Clippers could try to say, hey, like they can tell you that's negative value, in which case they're going to say, look, it doesn't matter what the salaries are. We want all your first round picks, the maximum you could give us 4, and give us Colin Murray-Boyles. I think that's what they'll ask.
Well, that's what they'll start with.
Yeah,
and then they'll get real.
They're going to start with. And then it probably trims down to something like 3. I think the Clippers don't do this without 3, because I just don't think any of the players they're getting back is really going to be a part of anything. Like, okay, maybe they could get a Jamal Shed or Jacoby Walter, but it's all about the draft picks there. And I would not do this if I'm the Raptors. That's too much for a 34-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, I was very interested in the idea of Kawhi to the Raptors when I thought the value was going to be reasonably low. The value is seems to be higher than we thought. Now, maybe that's Clippers PR. Like maybe they've just done a good job of convincing me that Steve Ballmer really doesn't want to trade Kawhi when in basketball terms they kind of have to. Like, what is the point of keeping Kawhi to win 45 games at best next year and more likely have Kawhi get hurt and you like totally tank? So
Yeah.
maybe that they've just done an effective PR campaign and the value seems higher. Like, how much of the value do you like if it was 3 first round picks, but you also got off of Pirtle in the deal? Does that move you at all?
I think that's reasonable. Like no matter what you're taking on bad money, if I am trading more than two, then I for sure want Pirtle included if I'm the Raptors. But again, I just wouldn't do that. It's too risky. How many like okay, Kawhi's an all-time great. He's probably gonna have like a little longer longevity than his knee problems suggest. I just also don't think that's where I would push my chips in for Scotty Barnes, co-star. I would look for a younger second best player. Obviously, Kawhi right now is better than Scotty Barnes, but like just I would want someone who's more on his timeline and costs less.
Someone like LaMelo Ball?
Someone like LaMelo Ball, I think he would have made a lot more sense on this Raptors team. But the
I
big
I
this is
agree with that.
if you're wondering why the Raptors couldn't get LaMelo Ball, even though they have more draft picks, they could beat it. The answer is all these contracts. Like the big reason I think the Hornets took the Wolves package was because the Wolves already had this Randall agreement in place, so they didn't have to take back all this extra money. They just got Naz Reid and that big trade exception. Uh, the Raptors have worse salaries, I would say, and they don't have anything where they can send these guys out. They didn't do that. I don't know if maybe they could have traded Ingram to the Nets as an example for a similar type of trade, but if they had something like that ongoing, maybe they could have snuck in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on what the offer was. We don't know how many picks were really on the table. But the other thing is, Minnesota's 2033 first round pick was so valuable because Minnesota has no other picks before it. Whereas the Raptors having all of their own picks, you'd rather have a pick from a team with no picks than a pick from a team that has all of their picks. So that might have been a factor in this as well, where Charlotte just valued Minnesota's 2033 pick more than anything. I think where I'm at with the Raptors is you're right. You need to get the right second best player. And if that guy's not on the market, and they thought LaMelo Ball would be, but if he's not, I'd probably just be comfortable being a playing team next season and seeing what happens. Like, I don't know what the urgency is. Scotty is still young. You can tick off some time on these bad contracts. I don't think that they're in any great need to rush. It's weird. I was thinking about this. Like, Scotty Barnes was 1 year after Anthony Edwards, right? Draft wise. We have
Yeah,
had no conversations whatsoever about the fact that he has never won a playoff series. And like, do the Raptors have to worry about that? Whereas Anthony Edwards has been to the conference finals twice and we're worried about, is that just like a Anthony Edwards is a higher tier of stars sort of thing? Does nobody want
I
to talk about Scotty Barnes?
I think the moment the Raptors push chips in, which they haven't done, then you start to hear that conversation.
Yeah, but I we are mostly in agreement. I'd rather just keep those chips, wait for the right guy. I would have only done Kawhi at the right price. I'm not like
Right.
so desperate to get Kawhi that I'm willing to totally mortgage my draft future. So let's go on to the Spurs now. I think the situation is more similar with the Spurs and Raptors than you would probably think on first glance. Could the Spurs legally make a trade without De'Aaron Fox? The answer is yes. Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson match Kawhi's contract legally, and the Spurs have so much more tax room that would be tenable as a 1 year thing. But you're obviously not trading for Kawhi as a 1 year thing. You want an extension, and that's where this starts to get a lot harder because Victor Wembanyama's rookie extension kicks in after this season, then Stephon Castle a year after that, and then Dylan Harper a year after that. If that's happening and you have Kawhi on a long-term deal with De'Aaron Fox at the max as well, that is just financially untenable. So to make this happen, you probably have to say we are putting Kawhi into the De'Aaron Fox salary slot and finding another home for De'Aaron Fox. Well, where is that home? Because the Clippers have 2 point guards as is. They're not going to take him.
Yeah.
All of the other teams that have been linked to point guards so far this offseason, not all of them, but most of them have settled it, right? We had 4 point guards picked in a row in the lottery. The Heat just traded for Giannis. They don't have the financial flexibility to do this. Like, I don't know who the team is unless it's like, would the Bucks take him like for free? Just as like, oh, let's get a guy. I mean, I'm going up and down in my head.
Yeah.
There are not many teams here.
So the Bucks can take Fox as part of the if you expand the Giannis trade, and in that case, maybe they can get away with trading like one Miami pick to reroute to the Clippers. Maybe they've got because they got some extra picks now. Maybe that's one way it could happen. Because you're right, the teams are really tough. I was thinking the Raptors maybe, and then S talked me out of it. He was saying no, they think they'd rather stick with quickly making less than Fox. I don't think Houston makes sense. I don't think that's what they want to allocate their money to. Maybe Chicago.
Chicago is maybe even that I don't even really see. Like, there's not a good landing spot, right? Like maybe Phoenix. Like, are they just talent desperate enough?
Phoenix, you're talking. Well, now it's a little tricky. I haven't updated their sheet here. They did bring
like
back
Grayson Allen and Jalen Green or something.
So they got hold on. So they got to send out a lot more. So it's or maybe even Dylan Brooks has to go. I don't think they'll want to, but they don't have any. Do they have a pick to trade? They trade their 2033. Do they want to do that? You do 2033 Green.
No, 2033 is frozen, right?
No, 2032 is frozen.
Oh, 2032 is frozen. Okay.
So they could trade, and they could trade 2027, but that's going to be crap. So, so can you package 20? Do you want to package 2033 with Jalen Green and probably Grayson Allen?
No, I'm not giving up value to do that. But if I'm just moving money around, it's like I can just trade Jalen Green and Grayson Allen for De'Aaron Fox because the Spurs need us to accommodate a Kawhi trade. Then I'd be interested. That's just an interesting enough talent play for me, especially if I don't have championship ambitions. It's just like, well, if I have De'Aaron Fox and Devin Booker, and I have a decent defense around them, I can be a playing team perpetually and maybe win a playoff series in the right year. I don't know. I think crazy to me.
Yeah. I think the Suns. I would be surprised if the Suns could just do Green and Allen for Fox. I think they're gonna have to trade a pick, and then maybe you can do like a pick swap like they did 2 years ago. That I would be surprised if they can get.
You
Fox
are doing
those two, and I'm saying this was like and I'm saying this is like the guy who immediately called that Fox contract about a contract. I think the Suns would have to give up some positive value.
You are doing the Spurs a favor if you take that contract. The Spurs don't seem like they're actively shopping De'Aaron Fox. This would be a situation where they're like, this is the only way that we can get Kawhi Leonard. And if we get Kawhi Leonard, we're going to be like the heavy championship favorites for basically the next forever, right?
Yeah.
Because as soon as Kawhi ages out, at that point, Harper, Castle, and Wemby are going to be so good that you won't even really notice. That's the sort of thing where the Spurs are just like, we literally just need somebody to take the contract, take it, and then the Clippers will take Green and Grayson Allen or something. That would be the only situation. The Spurs obviously have the asset value to do this between I'm sure the Clippers would love Carter Bryant, and I'm sure the Spurs would say absolutely not. But the Spurs obviously have so much draft capital that 2027 Hawks, decent pick, especially in flattened lottery era. 2031 Kings, you're obviously always very eager to have that. 2030, they have the double swap rights with the Mavericks and the Timberwolves. Very, very interesting pick. They have such good draft capital that if they could just figure out the Fox thing, yeah, of course they could get Kawhi. And then it's just a matter of, do you want Kawhi?
Yeah.
And I personally think at the right price, and if you could move Fox, I probably would, because I know there's been all this talk about De'Aaron Fox being an offensive organizer and Dylan Harper not being ready to do that. I'm not dismissing the importance of that. I am saying if you have Kawhi Leonard and Victor Wembanyama, I don't know how organized your offense really needs to be. Yeah. I think you're just going to be so overwhelmingly talented that if you're healthy, you're going to win the championship.
I think the point is the Clippers, they're going to push hard for getting value for Kawhi. And I think if you're the Spurs, you're going to want to send Fox to a team that will give some positive value to the Clippers to help, because they don't have that many first round picks to trade. They have very valuable ones with that Kings pick, or the Wolves Mavs one. They can only trade one or the other. So that is where they can dip into some valuable ones. But if you can minimize the amount of picks you trade, like the two, I would try to do that, especially if you're trading Fox. And they traded like one valuable first to get him, that Wolves future pick. So I would just want to try to get someone to help out with that. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, if somebody's willing to go value for Fox, awesome. I don't know that that's the case. I think if they were to move Fox right now, it would probably cost assets. So moving him as neutral value is probably a win. But I think we can put a pin in Kawhi for now.
Yeah.
What else is on the agenda?
So then we have another trade. Yeah, Isaiah Stewart trade. So we touched on this on Twitter. Let's start with Detroit, and then we could talk about Memphis a little bit. So the Pistons, they traded Isaiah Stewart. Well, maybe I should take a step back. 2 nights ago, they traded the 21st pick to the Grizzlies to move up for what was it, 17, and they traded 3 second-round picks along with it. And then yesterday, they traded Isaiah Stewart back to the Grizzlies in exchange for those 3 second-round picks back. And I'm just like, wait, what is going on here? Why did the Pistons do this? I'm thinking maybe they just wanted to be spun as Stewart traded for 3 seconds instead of Stewart traded to move up 4 spots. I don't know if that's what happened, but part of the value, I think, with Stewart is, and I'm a little surprised that nobody seemed to want him. And I understand that he was not really helpful at all in the playoffs, but he's like a very good backup big man for the regular season. I think he's gonna increase his value again. So part of it is that the Pistons also wanted to save money because they're trying to do something. So they are salary dumping him. And now they are in a position where they have a lot more luxury tax space, about $75 million below the tax line. I'll remove Stewart's incentives. And now they have optionality. They can re-sign Jalen Duren to a lot of money, re-sign Tobias Harris, keep all their guys, and try to do a trade for somebody, maybe a Tyler Hero. Or they can opt to have cap space where maybe you cut Duncan Robinson, you renounce all those other exceptions where you can again get to like 34-ish million. In that case, that's still Tyler Hero money, but maybe you want to get in the mix for Norm Powell. That seems to be the big name. I would anticipate that they're going to use this threat of cap space to try to leverage a sign and trade for one of their guys, or a trade. If it's specifically Norm Powell, that's how it is. And then you could expand the Isaiah Stewart trade. You could send his $15 million out to Memphis still. And then if you take back Norm, you could start him at like $24 million on a 3-year deal. So it feels like that might be where this is heading.
We're not going to say the name LeBron James. That's not on anybody's mind quite yet. Wendy brought it up, not me.
Wait, he did?
Yeah, apparently. I only saw the aggregation, but I checked. There were enough people talking about the aggregation that it was like apparently on the draft show, he said they're going big game hunting, and he mentioned Kawhi and LeBron. And Kawhi is its own can of worms because of the extension. I'm like, well, if LeBron wants to win a championship and he wants to get paid, that's a way to try to do that. I don't think he's really going to do it. I don't think he's going to take that seriously, but just something to bring up. As far as why Isaiah Stewart, his value was lower than we thought it was, I wonder if there was a little bit of Montrezl Harrell, big who's too small, struggling in the playoff syndrome here. They struggled in the playoffs for very different reasons. For Montrezl Harrell all those years ago, it was that just Jokic killed him. And then for Isaiah Stewart, it was he just wasn't viable on offense, so they had to go to Paul Reed. So obviously they're very different players, but maybe it's sort of that situation where it's like they're too small, they're a backup, they're not somebody that we would ever really prioritize. So you're not going to get a first-round pick for him. He's mostly a regular season player. I do like him in Memphis just because of the way Isalo coaches, where he likes to have his players play in those shorter bursts. So you want to have as much depth as possible, because the only 2 guys on the team last year, aside from the like end of season, whatever guys who played more than 28 minutes a game, were Jaren Jackson, who has now been traded, and John Morant, who they are trying to move. So they don't play guys big minutes, which means you have to have a ton of depth. They drafted Kareem Lopez in addition to Cam Boozer. They have Santi Aldama in the building. They have Gigi Jackson. Like, they've got a lot of guys who are just generally bigger. I think they're going to want to minimize minutes, and sure, why not bring in Isaiah Stewart? It's a relatively low cost maneuver.
So I think he's going to rehabilitate his value. I think it's going to go up from here. And I mean, anything else as far as like who the Pistons could look to get now?
I mean, Zach LaVine, if you really wanted to get, they have been linked to him, where the thought on that front would be, could you like trade Sacramento, Karis LeVert, and some other money? And then could you go to Zach LaVine before you make the trade and say, hey, we're getting you from Sacramento onto a championship caliber team. We're only going to do this if you extend on team friendly terms in advance. So would he tack like 2 mid-level years onto his contract after the $49 million? Then maybe I think that might make sense. And you wouldn't have to give up value to do that. You'd just be taking on the money. And then that's you as Detroit taking advantage of the fact that Asar Thompson is not expensive yet. So you could do that and then have Zach LaVine go down when Asar Thompson goes up in the 27-28 season. That's one possibility as well.
I think he's a buyout guy for the mid-level. So if you could come out with a Norm Powell, Tyler Hero-esque guy, and then get a Norm Powell a Zach LaVine post buyout, and I think that you're pretty much set. I cannot see any team that would be a good situation for Zach LaVine, like the Pistons, like any contending level team, putting that $49 million salary, or even like having him decline it and doing a sign and trade for like 35 or 25 million a year. I think like that's just how these things go. Like, they're going to want him to take a buyout and then get him for as little as possible. It's just how these things go.
Right. No, I'm just saying, like, it might be kind of like a front loading thing, right? Where like, look at LaVine and say, like, would you take him for 3 years, 80? Well, he has 1 year, 50 left. So if you're the Pistons, it's like, we'll pay you 50 this year, but you've got to take 15 the next 2 after that. Where like, that would have to be the logic. You're using the player option to effectively front load a contract.
Yeah. So let's talk about how this Pistons team might shake out, because let's just keep everybody else. Let's say they are able to do that type of sign and trade that I suggested. So you get Norman Powell in, you start him at 24 million. You still have about 50 million below the tax. So you still can do a lot. You can use that mid-level. So maybe you are using a portion of that on a Zach LaVine type. The other thing I would keep an eye on is with some of these with the contracts we're seeing so far, I'm starting to anticipate Jalen Duren is going to get a max offer sheet from somewhere. If Trae Young got one, Austin Reaves got one, I think I already said it. And this will then dovetail to our next topic, but I do have an idea as far as like what the Pistons should do with Jalen Duren if he does get a max contract. Because if he gets the max, it's supposed to start at like 41.
41. Wait, is he eligible for 30% from another team or only the Pistons?
Only the Pistons.
Okay.
So something they could do, the other teams can offer him 4 for 177. So if you're the Pistons, that's basically what you want to match. We're going to talk about the Lakers next because they re-signed Austin Reaves, but I'll just show this now. This is the max contract that a team like the Lakers can offer Jalen Duren. If you're the Pistons and all you got to do is match this 177, and maybe you could go a little higher, this is where that 30% higher max thing that Jalen Duren qualified for could come in, because they can give him 30% of the salary cap that starts at 49.5 million. And then that could take him to like, I don't know, I think it's 5 for 200 something. What they could do is just start him at 49.5 million anyways and decline it. And you're basically matching the contract that other teams can offer. But over time, it's not going to feel like a max contract, because then once you get to that third year, this is like a very good value contract. You're talking about 23% of the cap, 20% of the cap. So this is just something now I'm starting to think, like, I wonder if part of the reason they decided to move, they were so ready to move off from Stewart, because they're going to pay, maybe they're going to go as high as possible for Duran on the short term, in which case it just doesn't really make sense to have Stewart there and to clear out as much money as possible if they're going to get that extra scorer and maybe a second one.
Yeah, the idea there essentially is that Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson are kind of on escalators going in the opposite direction. Whereas Jalen Duren goes down because he's starting at 49. Asar goes up. He's still on a rookie scale deal this year, but I would presume his eventual extension will raise annually, but it doesn't have to. I just think that's how it tends to go. My big question here is, why Norm Powell of all guys? Why are you going for the 33-year-old as the Pistons? Like
that's just the name. That's the name that's out there. I'm just
I don't like I would be a little bit more eager.
Example.
I don't know how much it would cost to get Tyler Hero. I would be more interested in Tyler Hero than I would be Norman Powell. I also just frankly wouldn't mind sticking Miami as an Eastern Conference rival with the 33-year-old Norm Powell, because like if the Heat get more creative and get somebody a little bit younger, I'd kind of be a little bit more afraid of that team than I would if their two best ball handlers are Giannis at 31 and Norm Powell at 33. Yeah, I might try to, I might even say like, would you rather have Anthony Simons than Norm Powell?
No. If I can get I would pay I'd pay a little bit more of a premium. If you could get Norman at the low 20s, I'd rather have him than Simons.
How much better is he really than Simons? I'm not convinced that gap is as big as you think it is.
I think for a playoff setting, I'd rather spend a little more on Powell. Yeah.
Even with the potential age-related decline factored in?
As long as you keep it pretty short, like you have to give him a sign and trade 3 years. Maybe you can make the third year non-guaranteed. I'm just saying you're gonna have to go above the mid-level most likely for Powell, where Simons might be around like the mid-level, like exactly.
We're gonna end up revisiting this because I think there's a good chance Miami winds up with Simons if they lose Powell, where he's just a mid-level guy that they can afford. I think in a year we might look back on that and say you would have rather had Simons just based on the age curve.
Yeah.
I just something to keep in the back of your mind. Did you want to do a Ja Morant buyout before we got to the Lakers?
Yeah. So this is okay. Well, you buried the lead, but or did the opposite of that. But basically, now we talked about every point guard today. I think we touched on most of them. And where does that leave Ja Morant? I don't think like it's maybe the Kings at this point. The Suns aren't.
Why they drafted Acuff?
Well, hold on. Well, maybe they just want to do it anyways. I mean, you never know. It's the Kings.
Your logic is they're the Kings.
Yeah. Then there's the Pelicans, but I guess there's mixed reporting about that. Like there's a recent report that they're actually not pursuing him. They're obviously the Wolves are out. Maybe the Raptors, but the longer we go, it just seems like it's not going to happen. There's quotes on ESPN that he's so available, but no one wants him, and maybe some teams are asking for picks. So I do think it's worth exploring what does a Ja Morant buyout look like and what the precedent for that is, because I wouldn't rule it out. I think at this point it's definitely a plausible scenario if the Grizzlies can save substantial money. With the big caveat that he's got 2 years left on his contract. He's making 42 this year, and then I think $45 million next year. So before I get into what that could look like, anything you want to touch on?
Well, yeah, the idea here would be that the value for Memphis would be, could we get him to give up the mid-level and then sign the mid-level somewhere else so he's getting the same money? So that the value for Memphis there is, yeah, you're going to have 27 million or whatever on your books as dead money. But the alternative is being stuck with Ja, who like you are getting savings in that scenario versus having Ja, who you just clearly don't want to have on your team. And I mean, as you turn the franchise over to Cam Boozer, I just think it is not tenable to have Ja Morant in your building. So the question then becomes, who out there is going to be the Ja Morant mid-level team? Like, does that team exist? Because it needs to for this sort of buyout to make sense. I thought Minnesota made a ton of sense, and then Minnesota traded for LaMelo Ball. So who is a mid-level team that could pursue Ja Morant? And even that, I'm kind of struggling with.
Yeah. Cap space teams could bring him in. Chicago, Brooklyn. That's an easy one. You've got...
I think if you're taking a buyout as Ja Morant, though, because players hate taking buyouts. So I didn't used to buy into this. I started watching it more closely, and I actually do think there's some validity to this. The reason players don't like taking buyouts is that they really do believe that their future salary to some extent is based on reputation that is based on their prior cap number. So like a reason that some guys don't take buyouts in the middle of a season before free agency is that they know that they would have to sign a minimum deal to go anywhere during the season. And they feel that once you've signed a minimum deal, you are branded as a minimum salary player and it's hard to escape that. I would look at free agents like Gary Trent Jr. as an example of that. They might be onto this. So if I'm Ja Morant, I would be pretty scared to brand myself as a mid-level player unless I was going to a really good situation. Why would I take the mid-level to go to Milwaukee? Why would I take mid-level or like something like that to go to Chicago or Brooklyn? The appeal of a
Yeah.
buyout would be, could I take the mid-level from a good situation? And the problem is I don't see a good situation.
What about Dallas?
Are they trading Kyrie in this scenario?
No, you're signing him with the mid-level.
You're signing him and you're going to have Kyrie and Ja on your team?
You trade Kyrie later.
I mean, I personally wouldn't. This might just be that I don't think Ja Morant is a good bet anymore. Again, we've talked about this. The thing with Ja Morant is that there is a 10% chance you're getting 2023 Ja Morant. You're getting an all NBA player. But if he can't improve his rim numbers, like if he can't get to the basket at the rate that he did at his peak, because he can't shoot or defend, he is a outright negative value player. So I just would be very, very cautious about bringing him in unless I felt like I had the perfect ecosystem for him. Before Charlotte re-signed Kobe White, I thought that would have made a lot of sense. Like, can you imagine Ja Morant with the spacing of Knipple, Brandon Miller, and Naz Reid? Like, if he has anything left physically, would have gotten to the rim at will.
Clippers, just kind of a blank slate, but they have too many guards now, so maybe not. The Bucks, I think, seems like the most obvious.
Well, can I throw out a surprising one?
Uh-huh.
The Celtics have said they want rim pressure.
Yeah, they've got the mid-level. They can offer it.
That would be the situation where, like, if I'm Ja, and like that's the team that I would give up the money for. I would be like, I'll take the mid-level buyout. I'll go sign with Boston. Like that is a potential career-saving move if he could do that.
I think he would have to accept that. I don't think Missoula would play him. Is guaranteed to play him like every night that often. I don't think he'll give a damn because he's gonna want like 5-out shooting, especially with. He's got Keita right now who can't shoot. That's the only issue. If they could get a shooting big man, maybe they look into that. They got to really have the pieces right, but it just screams Milwaukee to me post buyout. Just give him the mid level. Seems like the easiest thing.
I don't know. If I were Ja, I might just say like, well, I guess maybe playing with Taylor Jenkins is appealing enough that he would consider that, but. I'm just not excited about going to Milwaukee.
So I remember about 5 years ago, Kemba Walker had, I think it was like 2 years, 80 million left on his contract. He had just been traded, or maybe 70 million. He had just been traded to the Thunder from the Celtics, and he gave back $20 million in his buyout. He signed a 2-for-20 deal, I believe, with the Knicks, right? And with a team option?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So that is one precedent. And then I believe later that, or maybe it was the year before, the season previously, Blake Griffin, he gave back, I don't know, I don't think it was quite 20 million, but he gave back quite a bit of money, like 13, 14 million.
It was much more than he got because he only signed for the minimum with the Nets.
Yeah, he lost money on that, but he gave back like 13 million halfway through his second to last season, in which he's making something in the 30s. And then he was making also something in the 30s the following year. So he gave back a lot. I don't know how this would go for Ja, because if you're looking at the Kemba precedent, then he probably needs to give back like 25 in the 2 final years combined. So maybe he shaves off like 12 and a half this year and 12 and a half the next year, something like that. And then maybe he makes money on it. If he can get a 2-year full mid-level, that's 30 million. I think, would you go lower than that if you're Memphis? Would you go like even 20 million?
Honestly, I probably would. If I can't trade him, My philosophy is Memphis, and you're not going to John Wall him. That's going to become a circus. You have to get him off the team one way or another. You can't have him on the team next year.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you could save 10 million on him, that's basically the higher end scenario of like how much money you could reduce in a trade for him. Like if a team's sending the minimal amount back to get him. So you're probably not going to save more money than 10 million. The big thing is then you have his, what is that going to be like 30? Let's say you take off 10 million. You got $32 million eating up this, the dead money this year. And then you lose the ability to trade him next year when he's expiring. But the Grizzlies have a lot of money right now. They have a lot of flexibility. They're going, I think they might buy out Pope. I imagine that might be a possibility, whether it's with them or if he gets traded to another team. Like with Zach LaVine, that's not a contract where it works on a good situation. And when I'll pull up their cap sheet for next year, they have like no money. They've got like 72 million in space next year. So if you can reduce off Jaws a little more, maybe you'll have traded Aldama by then. Like they're in a fine place. They're still going to be rebuilding. They're still going to be developing these guys. If I'm sure they know what the market is by now, and if they feel like they just will not be able to trade them, I don't think it's the end of the world to do a buyout at this point.
I mean, I think that's better than the alternative of not trading him. Yeah. So let's get to the Lakers and let's get out of here.
The Lakers have agreed to re-sign Austin Reaves to a 4-year maximum contract. So they're going to pay him slightly more than the maximum amount other teams can offer, and to give him a player option on top of that. Yeah, I mean, what do you think about this deal?
I mean, Detroit forced their hand, right? Detroit was going to max him if they didn't, so they maxed him. And I think getting him on a 3+1 was probably more of the Reeves camp preference than a Laker preference. I think the Lakers would have rather just had him for 5 years. So I think Austin Reaves got everything that he wanted in this deal. He got a full max for the exact terms that I think made sense for him. He can now hit free agency again when he's 31, I think, or at least going into his age 31 season. So this worked out really, really well for him. The question now, like we knew this was coming, right? There's nothing really to talk about on the Austin Reaves front. The question now is just what do they do? And it seems like they're going to throw a big offer sheet at one of the centers. Is it Duren or is it Walker Kessler?
I think we'll find out soon, because the closer we get to neither of those guys accepting a deal with their current teams, the more it seems like maybe some of these teams don't want to touch the type of money that they're going to get offered. Like I think that deal Walker Kessler's getting offered by the Jazz, $28 million a year. That's already pretty generous for him. If the Lakers want to go above that, I think at that point I might want to see if maybe you want to talk a sign and trade, but I don't know. That's a lot. If you're going to talk like 5 for, what is it? What do you like? What would the Lakers have to do to really make the Jazz uncomfortable? 5 for 160?
Well, the Lakers, you're saying in a sign and trade? Yeah, they could go 5 years.
The
Lakers can offer 5.
I'm sorry. 4 for 1. So not 1. What do you think they'd have to do?
You want me to be honest?
What?
If you're the Lakers, and this is a bad contract, to be clear, it is a clear overpay, you might have to do something really irresponsible to get the Jazz not to match. I think you could argue that the irrational, but like maybe thing you have to do is throw like the Chandler Parsons 2+1 max at Walker Kessler, purely with the idea that this will scare the Jazz off, but it's a short enough commitment that after the 2 years are up, we can negotiate a new deal and have him opt out with the player option, try to steal him away. Yeah. That contract, to be clear, would be an overpay. I would not want Walker Kessler. Yeah, I would not want Walker Kessler on a max deal. The logic for the Lakers is that if you can get him on an offer sheet instead of a sign and trade, you still have your picks at your disposal. So what you could do afterward is take Jared Vanderbilt, take DeAndre Ayton if he opts in, take whatever salary you have, attach it to your picks, and go get wings with the idea that you have Luka and Reeves in place, so your ball handling is set. Walker Kessler would be your center finally. And then everything after that would be, we have a little bit of cap space left. We have 2 first-round picks because they drafted Cameron Carr, who I think they'd want to keep, and just say, can we get a wing or two like that? And that is our team. And look, I don't think that you're going to be able to get LeBron back if you do that. Like, or maybe you take the capper mid-level, probably not.
It's done.
But that would be the idea, right? That's how you get both a center and a wing. The idea would have to be, the only way to get both, I think, would be to overpay for Walker Kessler so you don't have to give up picks to get a center. Now, as bad as a contract as I think that has the potential to be, I think the way you'd have to rationalize it as the Lakers is that you are getting so much surplus value on Luka not being on a supermax because he was traded from Dallas before he could sign it, that you're really looking at this and saying, okay, we're paying 25% of the cap to Walker Kessler and 30% to Luka. Let's just think of it as 35% to Luka and 20% to Walker Kessler.
So you think the Lakers should do that, which would tie up their flexibility for next year, which they could still get in like max contract vicinity range. You think at this point they should just throw that away and give Kessler this type of deal?
Well, what's your intel? If you have any thought that, like, and look, we've joked about this on the show. If Luka is texting Jokic and Jokic is like, yeah, I'm interested, well, then of course you don't. Then you just run it back on one of your deals. But if you don't have any intel that you're going to be able to do anything with that 2027 cap space, if Jokic is re-signing, if Mitchell is re-signing, if Giannis is re-signing, like, you're going to be in the same position next year anyway.
I'd anticipate that the Pistons, if they're going to offer during a max offer sheet, the Pistons can figure out. I showed how they could like work around it. Like the Pistons have enough room where they could try to keep that number as high as possible and keep it lower on the back end. The question is, can Utah handle that? I don't think so. I don't think they'd be able to give him a max salary for even 2 years. Maybe because here for this upcoming season, it's fine. They'll still be under the tax. But when you're looking at the following season, when you're presumably going to have Keontae George on a big deal, I don't think that's gonna work. Like they're gonna have to like suck up being a taxpayer temporarily to do that. Let me just pull it up, because if you've got, let's say this is Kessler's number, like I'll just say it's 45. Yeah, you're gonna be a tax team to keep Keontae George at that point. So
I mean, would you maybe trade Lauri Markkanen at that point? Like if you had to do that?
I would suspect the Jazz I don't know. I think they just let Kessler go at that point, right?
Yeah. So that's like, look, that's the way the Lakers could in theory do it. It would be an enormous risk. It would be pretty irresponsible. But if you want to get a high-end center and you don't want to trade draft picks to do it, because you like the Lakers between their cap space and their picks have a lot of needs to fill. So giving up both cap space and picks for one guy, as you would have to in a sign and trade, is like, that's just not tenable, right? If you do a sign and trade where you give up all of your draft picks to get Walker Kessler, then you have no way of getting wings. So it's kind of useless. Yeah, so I'd rather overpay for Walker Kessler on an offer sheet with the idea that I'm then going to turn around and use my picks to get wings.
That's really interesting. I don't know. I've got to think about it. I think it also would be contingent on what else they could do, because if they're going to use all their cap space on Kessler, they still have a little bit left over to get another guy. They have the room at level, but you're going to still need to then figure out what you're doing with the wing. Like, how are you going to trade some draft picks to it with your available starting salary later? Can you turn Vanderbilt in a first into a starting wing? That's going to be the other challenge then.
My whole thought here is you are taking Vanderbilt and Ayton and LaRavia and whatever salary you have, attaching that to your 2031 and 2033 first round picks and trading for whatever wings you can get. That's what I'm thinking.
All right. So let's see what happens. I'm sure we'll find out soon, because the Lakers, they could have had Nick Claxton. They could have had Isaiah Stewart. Sounds like they are aiming for something bigger. So I think we'll find out in the coming days what exactly the Lakers have in mind. I think we're done here, Sam. Anything else we need to touch on?
Again, the theme of today's episode I'm calling it creative irresponsibility. If you are in the Western Conference, you have to be irresponsible. You have to do something that has an enormously high chance of blowing up in your face, because that's the only way the reward is going to be high enough for you to feasibly compete with the Thunder and the Spurs. But anyway, read me at cbssports.com. Watch me on CBS Sports HQ. I am everywhere right now. I am writing. I'm talking. I'm doing all of my things. Sam Quinn, CBS on Twitter.
Make sure you're following him on Twitter as well. Make sure you guys are subscribed to Third Apron Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. If you're new here, please hit the subscribe button, give it a like. Sam and I will be streaming pretty periodically as news happens, and make sure you subscribe to the Substack as well. I just wrote a whole salary cap analysis on the Hornets Wolves trade. A lot of good stuff there. That one's a free article. And make sure you're following me on Twitter and Blue Sky. My name, Yossi Goslin. You'll be getting instant salary cap analysis as soon as any transactions happen. And thanks for supporting Third Apron. It's going to be a really fun next week and a half or so. I guess 2 weeks. We still have like 2 weeks of like just a splurge of transactions. And it's just a great time of year. So me and Sam are looking forward to talking about it some more. Thanks, everyone.